Raising the CHRISM, the male monthly cycle. This video is not conjecture. While this very concept was conveyed in different aspects throughout many ancient myths and legends throughout history the world over, I will break it all down in literal terminology so that you can apply it clearly in your own life. To be clear, this is a science, codified through an arduous personal process and experienced through trial and elimination. I will explain the entire process in detail, which, like the menstrual cycle, has several distinct stages which I've quantized into 12 equal parts. This entire process is a result of harmonizing the feminine aspect within the male, alchemizing in the new era, re-entering Eden. The most critical time of this cycle is when the moon is in the natal sun sign of the subject. But the entire cycle is sacred, and if you expend cerebrospinal fluid or semen during any portion of this process, you compromise the benefits you are capable of receiving. Now, practicing semen retention is the way. That's why you feel exhausted after you ejaculate, because you are ejecting life force out of your being. That very life force is vital energy, which, if raised to higher energetic centers, brings all the benefits of the ancient mystics. Cerebrospinal fluid is constantly being secreted in the cerebellum, in the claustrum to be precise, and it circulates down through the spine, descending into the sacrum, where it sometimes discharges in the seminal fluids. So practicing semen retention is the way to recycle this fluid and raise it back to the higher centers. That's how you can avoid that feeling of exhaustion, because when you do that, you're expelling and losing life force out of your being. When the male element is allowed to be added into this fluid, and this occurs as sperm in males, but females also have corresponding cells which allow this process to fuse in their vitriol. When these aspects within the subject are alchemically balanced, a seed is formed within the cerebrospinal fluid at the solar plexus during the phase when the moon is in the natal solar sign of the subject. If the seed is protected by alkaline living and the fluids retained and not expelled, being allowed to recycle upward through the system, it climbs back up through the spine and returns to the cerebrum from whence it came, where it enters a metaphorical tomb in the third ventricle for 1/12 of the cycle, or about 3 days, before it is re-released into the blood and diffused. This causes the pineal gland to become hard as it receives this precious salt, becoming stimulated into activation as the entire physical system is infused with this vital energy. As this process is repeated with frequency, the vibration of the cerebrospinal fluid gradually raises in its electromagnetic charge, turning up the amperes between neuron synapses, facilitating enlightening experiences, including tangible electromagnetic pulsations, or kundalini, which revitalize dormant brain cells, allowing us to employ more of our brains in conscious function and infusing our whole beings with higher dimensional vital life force. I'll describe all 12 segments, their alchemical name, and a description of the process of what happens during that stage of the cycle. In addition, I will share a passage from the book of my own apocalypse, or Revelation, the Apocalypse of Jval Iailu, which describes this very process in symbolic terms. The passage describes the third of 7 rites revealed to me. There's much more in that revelation, but in terms of this subject, this is all that's relevant. Now, in regards to the first stage, this stage occurs when the moon is in the sign immediately before the subject's natal sun sign. The alchemical name for this stage is called calcination, or preformation, or the stage when the pineal gland becomes hard from the salts which are already in the blood. But it's also the pre-formation of the seed within the heart chakra. The passage from the oracle goes as follows. I was then taken away to the Isle of the Midnight Sun, where Surya, or the sun, never sets, but remains low in the sky at night. There I saw the angel Ananda, draped in a saffron robe and late along in pregnancy, wreathing flowers into a garland. Behind her, a lion sat waiting. I asked the Alevo, the male guide who was taking me through the rites, what does this mean? The Alevo replied, this is the queen of the plant of kindness, and she is preparing a crown for her child whom the lion shall try to devour upon birth. The second stage is when the moon is in the natal sun sign of the subject, and the alchemical term is congelation. This is the formation of the seed, the birth in the solar plexus, or Bethlehem. The passage reads, I then saw a scorpion take the wreath from Ananda and lay it upon an altar as she labored and gave birth to a son. The third stage of the process is when the moon is in the sign immediately after the natal sun sign. This stage is alchemically referred to as fixation, when the stabilization of the seed takes place. The passage goes, now the lion swallowed Surya when the midnight came, but Ananda took to the sea and dwelt among crabs and fishes, and her child was also taken down before the lion could devour him. And the Alevo said, come with me. And he took my hand, and we came down to the sea of the night. And the fourth stage is when the moon is in 2 signs past the natal sun sign. This stage is alchemically referred to as dissolution, and is when the seed in the cerebrospinal fluid begins its descent into the sacrum from the solar plexus. The passage reads, there was the angel Ravana wearing a white hempen robe. Her hair was strung with silver beads, and she had 3 pearly wings. She was pouring out her waters into the abyss. Now, when I saw this vision, I also saw a scorpion at her feet and a dragonfly hovering around her pitcher. Moving on from this stage, we come to the 5th alchemical stage, which occurs in the 3rd sign past the natal sun sign. This stage is alchemically called digestion, which is when the seed in the cerebrospinal fluid enters the sacral region. Now, the cerebrospinal fluid is constantly being pulled downward by virtue of weight, but various breathing and prostration exercises, like salat, help to keep it flowing towards the head, because the sacrum and the occipital or cranial bones pump the cerebrospinal fluid up and down the spinal cord with every breath taken. Consciously working with the microcosmic orbit also maintains this energy inwardly and cycles this energy upward. Now the passage goes, this vision began to puzzle me, and I questioned the Alevo, saying, are these not merely figurative symbols? And he replied to me, Ben Adama, or son of the earth, how little do you comprehend even now? For in darkness a great light will dawn. Behold, Surya and Lanchaha are like dying embers. And then I looked out again and saw that the Atman, or soul, of the child was in the water of Ravana itself. And from there we move to the 6th alchemical stage, which occurs in the 4th sign past the natal sun sign. This stage is called Distillation, which is when the transmutation of the cerebrospinal fluid takes place. The passage reads, the day began to dawn from the light shining within the water, for the water of Ravana became as liquid fire, and light was dispersed throughout the entire land because of it. And from there we move to the next stage, which occurs in the 5th sign past the sun sign. This stage is alchemically called sublimation, which is when the ascension of the seed in the cerebrospinal fluid occurs. The passage reads, Then I saw the child rise up out of the water, lighting upon the wings of the phoenix, his mind one with the truth. Moving on, we come to the next stage, which occurs in the 6th sign past the natal sun sign. This sign is alchemically called suspension, which is when the seed enters into the tomb, or the 3rd ventricle. The passage is as follows. I sought discourse with the child, but could find him not. Yea, I searched for 3 days, and I found the child laying asleep in a cloud of smoke between the 2 pillars of the house of Svarogni, which is the house of the 4th rite. And from there we move to the next stage, which is the 7th sign past the natal sun sign. This stage is alchemically called incineration. This is when the seed is transformed or alchemized into a new seed. The passage is as follows. He flew down unto me, having a live coal in his hands, which he had taken from off of the altar between the 2 pillars. Moving on, we come to the 8th sign, past the natal sun sign, alchemically referred to as fermentation, which is when the seed contacts brain matter. The passage reads, He touched my lips with it, and said, The crimson seed has purged thy nostrils, and now the sting of Rakrab is within your forehead. The 9th sign past the natal sun sign is alchemically referred to as multiplication. This is when the seed spreads throughout the brain matter, and the effects begin. The passage reads, Peace and renewal are granted to your Atman. And finally, the last alchemical stage, which is 10 signs past the natal sun sign, is alchemically called projection. This is when the salts begin entering into the blood. The passage reads, Go therefore, purge yourself, your thoughts, your words, and your deeds, and acknowledge the flame that resides within you. Surya rises, yea, the child has risen, and your iniquities have been purged. And from there, the passage concludes as the Alevo said, Come with me. And he took my hand and led me onward in order to show me the next rite.